The air in Graceland was always thick with a special kind of magic. It wasn't just a smell of polished wood and old velvet, or the faint scent of peanut butter and banana sandwiches that seemed to linger in the grand halls. No. It was the echo of a legend, the feeling that Elvis Presley himself might just walk around the corner, humming a tune, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Millions of fans from all over the world came here, year after year, seeking that connection, that tangible link to the king. But not all echoes were welcome. High up in the music room, perched regally on a custom-built stand draped with purple velvet, because of course it had to be purple velvet, sat a creature that was both a beloved resident and a source of constant low-level panic for the Graceland staff. This was Presley. Not the king himself, but an African gray parrot, famed throughout the estate for one singular, startling talent. It could perfectly mimic Elvis Presley's laugh, and not just any laugh. That deep, rumbling, joyful, slightly mischievous burst of sound that was instantly recognizable from every concert recording and movie blooper reel. Kind of laugh that could fill a stadium. And, as it turned out, thoroughly spook a small tour group in a quiet mansion. Today was no different. The afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the polished floor. Tour group, mostly senior citizens and a few wide-eyed teenagers, was listening intently as their guide, a young woman named Brenda, spoke reverently about Elvis's love for music, his piano, his collection of records. The room was hushed, filled with a respectful awe. Suddenly, from its perch, Presley swiveled its head, its intelligent black eyes scanning the room. Its feathers, a striking slate gray, seemed to almost shimmer in the sunlight. A few people noticed it, pointing subtly. "Oh, look! It's the parrot!" a woman whispered, clearly delighted. And then it happened. Ho, ho, ho. The sound was shockingly loud, perfectly pitched, and utterly unmistakably Elvis. It boomed through the quiet room, seeming to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The woman who had just pointed shrieked, clutching her chest. A silver-haired gentleman jumped back, nearly tripping over a rug. Two teenage girls let out startled gasps, their hands flying to their mouths. Brenda, the tour guide, flinched her carefully composed smile, faltering for a split second. She'd heard it 1,000 times, but it still made her heart leap. "Oh, that's just Presley, folks," she said, trying to sound calm and reassuring. "He's quite the character." But the spell was broken. The reverence had been shattered by a disembodied chuckle. Guests looked at each other, some with nervous smiles, others still recovering from the fright. The aura of the king had for a moment been replaced by the sensation of being pranked by a ghostly jester. Brenda hurried the group along, her internal monologue a frustrated stream of consciousness. Why does he always do that right at the best parts? Later that afternoon, a memo landed on the desk of Mr. Henderson, Graceland's stern but fair general manager. It was a formal complaint, typed neatly from a couple who had apparently found the parrot's antics disrespectful and jarring. It wasn't the first. There had been complaints about jump scares, about children crying, about the general feeling of unease the parrot created. Mr. Henderson sighed, running a hand through his thinning gray hair. Presley was an institution in a way. It had been at Graceland for decades, a gift from a dear friend of Elvis after the friend had passed. It was a living piece of history, but it was becoming a liability. "Brenda," he called, seeing the young guide pass his office. "Come in for a moment, please." Brenda walked in, her shoulders slumped. She knew what this was about. "Another complaint about Presley," Mr. Henderson said, tapping the paper. "This is getting out of hand. We can't have guests feeling like they're in a haunted house. This is Graceland, not a fun house." "I know, Mr. Henderson," Brenda said, wringing her hands. "I try to warn them, but it's so unpredictable. He just lets loose." "Unpredictable or not, "Something has to be done," Mr. Henderson stated, his voice firm. "We've tried everything, covering his cage, moving him to quieter spots. Nothing works. He finds a way." He paused, looking at the ceiling, as if imagining the booming laugh echoing through the mansion. "I'm starting to think we may have to consider rehoming him." Brenda's eyes widened. "Rehome Presley? But he's always been here." "I know," Mr. Henderson said, his voice softening slightly. "Believe me, it's not a decision I take lightly. But we have a responsibility to our guests. If we can't find a way for him to coexist peacefully, then we have to pre-order the visitor experience." He picked up the phone. "I'm calling a staff meeting for tomorrow morning. We need to brainstorm, and if we can't find a solution, then, well, we'll cross that bridge." Brenda left his office, a knot forming in her stomach. Rehoming Presley felt wrong. The parrot, for all its disruptive laughter, was a part of Graceland, a quirky, living tribute. But she also knew Mr. Henderson was serious. The ghostly guffaw had to be silenced, or Presley's days at Graceland were numbered. Riley's heart thumped a joyful rhythm against her ribs. She smoothed down the crisp new uniform, a neat navy blue skirt and a white Graceland polo shirt, and took a deep, shaky breath. Today was the day, her very first day working at Graceland. Ever since she was a little girl, Elvis Presley had been a hero in her family. Her grandmother, bless her heart, had seen him live, and her mother had grown up on his records. Riley had inherited the fascination, spending hours poring over old photos, listening to his music, and dreaming of one day visiting, let alone working, at his iconic home. Landing this summer job as a junior tour guide assistant felt like winning the lottery. The mansion, even on a bustling morning, felt alive. The sun caught the glitter of gold records on the walls, and the air hummed with hushed conversations and the gentle shuffle of footsteps. Riley practically floated through her initial orientation, soaking in every detail about the flow of tours, the security protocols, and the importance of preserving the magic of Graceland. Her supervisor, a cheerful woman named Ms. Jenkins, led her through the house, pointing out key areas and offering tidbits of information. "And this, Riley, is the famous jungle room," she said, gesturing to the vibrant green carpeted space. "Very popular. Guests love the waterfall." Riley asked, genuinely curious. Ms. Jenkins chuckled, a slightly strained sound. "Oh, you'll see. We have a resident, a very vocal one." She didn't elaborate, just smiled conspiratorially. They continued their walk, and soon enough they approached the music room. It was exactly as Riley had seen in pictures. A grand space with a piano, a jukebox, and tucked away in a corner near a large window, a magnificent bird stand. And on that stand, preening its gray feathers with remarkable dignity, was a large parrot. Riley gasped, instantly charmed. She'd seen parrots before, but none quite so majestic. "What kind is he?" "That's Presley," Ms. Jenkins said, her voice dropping a little. "He's an African gray, very intelligent, very memorable." Just as Ms. Jenkins finished her sentence, Presley swiveled its head. Its gaze seemed to lock onto Riley, its dark eyes surprisingly piercing. Riley felt a little thrill. Maybe she could make friends with the famous Graceland parrot. Then Presley opened its beak. Ha, H-A. The sound exploded in the quiet room. It wasn't a squawk, not a chirp, not a normal bird sound. It was a booming, throaty human laugh, and it was undeniably, perfectly Elvis. Riley gasped, stumbling back a step, her hand flying to her mouth. Her heart, which had been beating a happy rhythm just moments before, now hammered a frantic drum solo. It was so loud, so unexpected, so real. It truly sounded like Elvis was standing right there, having a good belly laugh. Ms. Jenkins sighed, a long, suffering sound. "See what I mean?" she said, her voice a little weary. "He's got timing, that one." Presley seemed to preen, tilting its head as if expecting applause. Riley, though startled, felt a different kind of sensation bubble up inside her. It wasn't just fear, it was wonder, and a strange, unshakable feeling of connection. This bird wasn't just mimicking a sound. It was almost channeling a spirit. It was incredible, even if it was terrifying. Later that morning, during a short break, Riley overheard snippets of conversation from other staff members. "Did you hear him this morning?" spooked Mrs. Higgins right out of her sensible shoes. "Management's really hot about it. Mr. Henderson's talking about rehoming him again." Rehoming, the word sent a chill down Riley's spine. To move Presley, it seemed unthinkable. This parrot was as much a part of Graceland as the gilded piano. During the afternoon staff meeting, Mr. Henderson laid it out clearly. "The complaints are increasing. We love Presley truly. He's been here for decades. But we cannot have guests leaving Graceland feeling agitated or upset. We need solutions. Creative ones, and we need them fast." He looked around the room, his gaze resting briefly on Riley, the newest recruit. "Anyone with ideas, even the wildest ones, please come forward." No one spoke immediately. A few people exchanged glances clearly, having given up on this problem long ago. Riley, despite her initial fright, felt a surge of something, a combination of determination and protectiveness. She knew this place, this mansion, was sacred, and Presley, for all his startling antics, was a living, breathing connection to the man who made it sacred. She couldn't let him be sent away. After the meeting, Mr. Henderson caught Riley before she left. "Riley, a word." She turned, her heart doing a nervous flutter. Had she already done something wrong? "You're new. You have fresh eyes," he said, surprising her. "I want you to spend some time observing Presley. See if you can spot any patterns, any triggers, anything at all. Consider it your primary task for the next few days alongside your other duties." He looked at her, his expression serious. If anyone can figure this out, it might be someone who isn't jaded by years of trying. Riley felt a sudden rush of excitement, mixed with a healthy dose of apprehension. Her dream job had just come with a very loud, very challenging feathered assignment. She nodded, her resolve hardening. "Yes, Mr. Henderson, I'll do my best." As she walked back towards the music room, the echoes of Elvis's booming laugh still fresh in her mind, she looked at the magnificent gray bird. "Presley," she whispered, a strange feeling of determination settling in. "Let's see what makes you tick." The next few days for Riley were a whirlwind of new experiences and a deep dive into the unpredictable world of Presley. Her regular duties, which involved assisting tour guides and helping guests, often felt secondary to her new unofficial mission. Understanding the parrot, she started by simply observing. Every chance she got, especially during the quieter hours, between tours or after the last group had left, took notes, meticulously charting Presley's behavior. What was happening right before the laugh? Was it a sudden noise? A particular type of guest? Other staff members, particularly those who had worked at Graceland for years, offered her little hope. "Don't waste your time, sweetie," Brenda, the guide from the previous day, said with a sympathetic smile. "We've all tried. Treats, toys, talking to him. He's a one-trick pony. And that trick is scaring the living daylights out of people." Mildred, an elderly woman who worked in the gift shop but seemed to know everything about Graceland's history, chuckled softly. "That bird's got a mind of its own, just like the king, bless his heart," she winked. "He came here from a very special place, that one. After Elvis was gone, you see, he's just mourning in his own way." Mildred's words piqued Riley's interest, but Mildred was called away by a customer before Riley could ask more. Riley, however, wasn't easily discouraged. She noticed that the parrot wasn't always laughing. Sometimes it sat perfectly still, almost contemplative. Presley remained silent. Strange 1:30 p.m. School trip, lots of excited chatter, and running parrot went off twice. Once when a guide used the loud, excited voice. 3 p.m. Quiet moment, only security guard in the room. Presley let out a soft squawk. Then was quiet. The patterns were still fuzzy. Loud noises. Hand gestures sometimes triggered it, but not always. It was frustratingly inconstant. "Hey, Presley." Riley tried one afternoon after the last tour had gone through, speaking softly. "You're a clever bird, aren't you?" Presley tilted its head, its dark eyes fixed on her. Silence. Riley tried again, holding out a small approved parrot treat. A piece of apple. "Here, boy, you like apples." Presley watched the apple. Then, slowly, it leaned forward, took the apple from her fingers with its beak, and retreated to its perch, munching delicately. Riley held her breath, a small victory. It hadn't laughed. But then, just as she exhaled in relief, Presley swallowed the apple piece, looked her dead in the eye, and let rip. "Ha ha 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 ha," Riley mumbled, shaking her head, a small smile playing on her lips despite her fright. Even though it still spooked her, she couldn't deny the incredible mimicry. It was truly astounding. That evening, back in her small apartment, Riley pulled out her laptop. She wasn't just going to rely on observation, she was going to research. She typed in African gray parrots behavior and started reading. She learned that African grays were known as some of the most intelligent birds, capable of not just mimicry but understanding context. They could associate words and sounds with objects and actions. They were highly social and formed strong bonds with their human companions. And most important, stressed, it was an F-talk. Pommins. They could even pick up on emotions, mimicry as a form of bonding. Riley mused her Brahm of bonding, or at least it sounded like it was trying to evoke happiness or a specific memory of happiness. Could it be that Presley wasn't trying to scare people, but rather trying to communicate, to connect? And the only powerful sound it had, the one it had heard repeated with such joy, was Elvis's laugh. The thought was a revelation. It changed everything. Instead of viewing Presley as a menace, Riley began to see it as a creature perhaps caught in a loop, desperately trying to interact in the only way it knew how. She remembered Mildred's words. He came here from a very special place after Elvis was gone, mourning in his own way. What if the laugh was not a prank, but a call, a way to keep a memory alive? Riley closed her laptop anymore. She would try to understand the parrot on a deeper level, to see if she could connect with it. And maybe, just maybe, she could help Presley find a new way to express itself, a way that wouldn't send guests screaming for the exits. Operation Parrot Whisperer was about to get personal. Riley's new approach started subtly. Instead of just observing Presley during tours, she dedicated her quietest moments at Graceland to him. She'd bring her lunch to the music room after the morning rush, sitting a respectful distance from his stand, and simply be present. She didn't talk much at first, just let him get used to her quiet presence. She noticed things she hadn't before. When the mansion was truly empty after hours, Presley would sometimes make soft, clicking noises. Not words, not the laugh, just gentle, almost contented sounds. Sometimes she'd hear a low melodic whistle, a tune she couldn't quite place, but it was smooth and soothing. These sounds were usually drowned out by the general hubbub of guests. One afternoon, Riley decided to try an experiment. She remembered her research on African greys and their sensitivity to human emotions and sounds. She also remembered Mildred's hint about Presley's connection to Elvis after he was gone. She pulled out her phone and quietly played a very soft, instrumental version of an Elvis song, "Can't Help Falling in Love." She chose it because it was gentle, soothing, and universally recognized as Elvis's. She kept the volume barely audible. Presley, perched on its stand, paused, its preening, its intelligent eyes seeming to listen. Riley held her breath. The soft melody filled the otherwise silent room for a long minute. Nothing happened. Riley felt a pang of disappointment. Maybe this was pointless. Maybe Presley was just a mimic, nothing more. Instead of the booming laugh, a tiny, almost imperceptible sound escaped its beak. It was a soft click followed by a barely audible, almost breathy "Uh-huh." It wasn't the full, roaring laugh, but a quiet intimate sound. It was like a little sigh of recognition. Riley's heart fluttered. She felt a surge of pure, unadulterated hope. It was a minuscule sound, easily missed by anyone not paying absolute attention. But it was different. It wasn't the scare. It was something else entirely. She kept playing the music softly. After a few more minutes, Presley let out another soft, "uh-huh," almost like a quiet confirmation. It seemed to relax its feathers, looking less ruffled. Riley felt a profound sense of connection. It was a sensitive, intelligent creature responding to something deeper than simple noise. The next day, Riley tried another approach. She remembered that African greys often mimicked sounds associated with their strongest emotional bonds. What if the laugh wasn't just a sound, but a memory of joy? Instead of trying to stop the laugh, she decided to try and give Presley other sounds to mimic sounds that also carried positive emotions. But what she thought about Elvis, what else was he known for besides his booming laugh? His singing, of course, his deep, resonant speaking voice, his famous stage pronouncements. During a particularly quiet stretch, with only a few staff members nearby, Riley walked closer to Presley's stand. "Hey, Presley," she said, her voice soft and soothing. "You know, who else loved this room? Elvis did. He sang so many beautiful songs here." She hummed a few notes of "Love Me Tender." Presley watched her, unblinking. Riley felt a little silly humming to a parrot, but she pressed on. Then she remembered something Elvis often said at the end of his concerts. "Thank you. Thank you very much." It was always delivered with sincerity. A characteristic deep Southern drawl. Riley decided to try it. Slowly, clearly, she enunciated, "Thank you. Thank you very much." She tried to infuse it with the same gentle warmth that Elvis had. Presley remained silent, but its eyes were locked onto Riley. It tilted its head, a curious flicker in its gaze. Riley didn't push it. She simply repeated the phrase a few more times over the next hour. Gently, without expectation. Later that afternoon, a tour group came through. Riley was helping out, keeping an eye on the group while surreptitiously watching Presley. A young boy, excited, let out a loud shout near the parrot's stand. Everyone braced themselves. Riley tensed, expecting the usual booming laugh. Instead, Presley opened its beak, and a sound came out that made Riley's jaw drop. It wasn't the laugh. It was a clear, resonant, "Thank you. Thank you very much." The voice was deep, smooth, with that distinctive Elvis cadence. It was softer than the laugh, less startling, more polite. The tour group paused, surprised. Riley felt a wave of elation wash over her. It wasn't perfect. The laugh might still come. But this was a monumental breakthrough. Presley could mimic other things. It chose to mimic something gentle and polite. It wasn't just a ghost of a laugh. It was an echo of gratitude. Glimmer of hope had just turned into a bright, shining light. Riley knew she was onto something, but she still needed more answers. She needed to know why Presley mimicked Elvis so perfectly, why it had been brought to Graceland, what its life was like before. She needed the full story, and she knew just the person who might have it. Mildred. The next morning, Riley found Mildred tidying shelves in the gift shop, humming an old Elvis tune. Mildred, with her kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, always seemed to carry a piece of Graceland's enduring history with her. "Mildred," Riley began, trying to sound casual, but her voice betraying her excitement. "Could I ask you something about Presley?" Mildred smiled, her eyes twinkling. "Ah, the king's little friend. What about him, dear?" "Well, Mr. Henderson told me he's been here for decades, and you mentioned yesterday that he came from a special place after Elvis was gone. Do you know the full story? Why was he brought here?" Mildred leaned against a display of Elvis keychains, her gaze distant as if looking back through time. "Oh yes, dear, it's a sad story, but a beautiful one, really." She began to recount the tale. Presley wasn't Elvis's bird, not directly. He belonged to a man named Mr. Beaumont, Arthur Beaumont. He was a close, dear friend of Elvis's, a musician himself, but he preferred to stay out of the spotlight, here in the music room, talking about music, life, everything under the sun. Riley listened intently, a sense of wonder growing inside her. Mr. Beaumont caught Presley as a young bird, a gift from his travels. So smart Arthur just adored that bird, took it everywhere then. Elvis, he loved animals, you know, dogs, horses, chickens, you name it. He took a shine to Presley right away. Mildred paused, a fond smile on her face. Elvis would sit right there. She gestured towards the piano. Playing the piano, singing, and Arthur would bring Presley into the music room. He'd talk to it, laugh with it. He had a booming, wonderful laugh, as you know. It echoed through this very room. Riley imagined it. Elvis roaring with laughter, the sounds filling the room, and a young Presley absorbing every vibration, every cadence. A lump formed in Riley's throat. This was it, the missing piece. The laugh wasn't random. It was a direct, deeply ingrained memory of joy and connection. Then Elvis passed in '77, Mildred said, her voice dropping to a whisper. It hit everyone hard, especially those closest to him. Arthur. He was heartbroken. He just wasn't the same. He held on for a few years after, but his health declined. He wanted Presley to be a living memory of their friendship, a symbol of the joy they shared. Riley felt a wave of emotion wash over her. So Presley was brought here to remember Elvis. Exactly, Mildred confirmed, nodding. He came shortly after Arthur's passing. We've always seen him as a special kind of guardian, a quiet echo of the king's presence. Mildred sighed. He just started getting a bit loud in his old age, I suppose, and maybe confused. He hears the people, and he hears the sounds, and he remembers the laughter. Riley finally understood Presley wasn't being a nuisance out of spite or mischief. It was doing what it knew best, echoing a sound of happiness and connection from its past. The booming laugh wasn't a scare tactic. It was Presley's deeply ingrained memory of Elvis, a call, a tribute, a way of feeling close to the person and the time it remembered most fondly. It was trying to bring joy, just as Elvis had. But in a modern, often quiet museum setting, that joyous echo had become a startling interruption. Mildred, thank you, Riley said, genuinely grateful. This changes everything. Sometimes, dear, the answers aren't in books or instructions. They're in the stories, in the heart. Riley left the gift shop, her mind reeling with the new information. Presley wasn't just a parrot that mimicked Elvis. Presley was a loyal, heartbroken friend who lived in a house full of echoes, trying to keep the memory of a beloved human alive. The only way it knew how, the laugh was an act of love, not malice. This new understanding filled Riley with even greater determination. She didn't just want to stop the scary laughs anymore, she wanted to help Presley. She wanted to honor its history, its loyalty, its connection to Elvis. She wanted to help it find a new way to communicate that joy, a way that wouldn't spook the very people who came to Graceland to feel that same joy. She had built a bridge of understanding. Now she needed to walk across it and connect with Presley, heart to feathered heart. Armed with the profound knowledge of Presley's history and its deep connection to Elvis, Riley approached the parrot with a newfound reverence. The bird was no longer just a problem to solve, but a living, breathing box of Elvis's life, a loyal companion trying to honor a cherished memory. "Hey there, Presley," Riley said one quiet morning, her voice soft and warm. She sat on the floor a few feet from its stand, crossing her legs. "Mildred told me all about you, and Arthur, and how much Elvis loved your laugh." Presley tilted its head, its dark eyes studying her. "It didn't make a sound. He really did, didn't he? He'd laugh, and you'd laugh right back. It must have been wonderful." She pulled out her phone, not to play a loud track, but a very old, grainy recording she'd found online. It seemed to lean forward, as if straining to hear. The recording ended For a moment there was silence. Then Presley made a tiny, almost inaudible clicking sound. It wasn't a human sound, but a soft, internal communication. Riley felt a shiver down her spine. It was listening. It was reckoning Tuver or Dawn. She told Presley stories about Elvis. She had read about his love for his fans, his kindness, his passion for music. She'd hum his songs softly or sing a few lines in a gentle voice. Elvis loved "Love Me Tender, didn't he, boy?" She'd whisper, then hum the melody. Sometimes Presley would let out a soft, "Ah," not the roaring laugh, but a quiet, almost contemplative chuckle like a distant echo. It was distinct from the startling laugh, softer, more personal. It was like Presley was acknowledging, remembering, and agreeing with her. One afternoon, Riley was sitting with Presley, gently humming Heartbreak Hotel. She closed her eyes, for a moment lost in the music and the quiet atmosphere of the mansion. When she opened them, Presley had hopped off its perch and was walking slowly across its stand. Coming closer to the edge, stopped right at the edge of the stand, looking at her with an intense gaze. Then, slowly, deliberately, it extended one claw and gently, almost delicately, touched the edge of the velvet stand, nearest to her. It was a gesture, an invitation, a bridge being built. Riley slowly extended her finger, palm up towards the parrot. Presley looked at her finger, then back at her eyes. After a moment, it slowly, carefully stepped onto her finger. Riley's breath caught in her throat. She held perfectly still, her heart pounding. Presley was perched on her finger. She could feel the delicate weight of its feet, the gentle grip of its claws. She gently lifted her hand, bringing Presley a little closer to her face. Dark eyes seemed to hold ancient wisdom, a deep understanding. "Hey there, friend," Riley whispered, a tear pricking at the corner of her eye. She felt an overwhelming sense of privilege. This was more than just a bird. It was a connection to the past, a living legacy. Presley blinked slowly. Then, astonishingly, it opened its beak, and instead of the booming laugh, it let out a soft, almost whispered sound. It wasn't a distinct word, but it sounded like a gentle, elongated sigh, a sound of contentment. And then so softly, Riley almost missed it. A tiny, almost breathy, "Thank you." It wasn't the booming, "Thank you very much." It was a personal, quiet thank you spoken directly to her. Riley felt a wave of warmth spread through her. She had reached through the years, through the echoes, and touched the heart of this remarkable bird. She spent the rest of the day feeling a lightness she hadn't known before. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Presley might still revert to its old habits, especially with the influx of guests, but she had a connection now. She had built a bridge. The challenge now was to use this connection to help Presley express its love for Elvis in a way that wouldn't scare guests, but rather charm them. She knew the potential was there. The soft, "uh-huh," the quiet, "thank you." These were the sounds of a loving memory, not a startling prank. Riley started brainstorming. How could she present this new, gentler Presley to the Graceland visitors? How could she help them understand that the parrot was a living, breathing testament to Elvis's warmth and joy, not a spooky surprise? She knew she had to convince Mr. Henderson and the rest of the staff that Presley could be more than just the parrot that laughs like Elvis. It could be the parrot that remembers Elvis with love. Quiet breakthroughs with Presley gave Riley a renewed sense of purpose. Her conversations with Mildred and her own observations had confirmed her theory. Presley's laugh wasn't a random mimicry, but a deeply ingrained expression of loyalty and memory. Now she needed to help the parrot communicate that memory in a different way. Riley continued her patient work. She'd bring small treats, tiny pieces of fruit, or unsalted nuts, and offer them gently, talking to Presley the entire time. She'd play various Elvis songs, both upbeat and slow, watching for the parrot's reactions. She noticed that the slower, more melodic tunes seemed to calm Presley more than the lively rock and roll numbers. Slowly but surely, Presley began to offer more than just the soft, "ah-ha-ha," or the occasional whispered, Thank you. One afternoon, as Riley was humming Blue Suede Shoes, a little off-key, Presley startled her by piping up with a surprisingly clear, albeit slightly squeaky, "Well, it's one for the money." It was only a few notes, but it was unmistakably a fragment. Riley nearly jumped out of her skin, but this time it was from sheer delight, not fright. "Presley, you can sing!" she exclaimed, her voice full of joy. The parrot seemed to preen, almost as if accepting her praise. These new sounds, however, only emerged when Riley was alone with Presley, or when the room was very quiet and there were no tour groups present. The minute guests entered, especially if they were loud or made sudden movements, Presley would still occasionally revert to its startling booming laugh. It was as if a deep-seated instinct kicked in, or perhaps it felt overwhelmed by the sudden noise. Riley knew this was the biggest hurdle. She needed Presley to perform its new songs or gentler sounds during a tour. She approached Mr. Henderson a little nervously. "Mr. Henderson, I think I'm making progress with Presley." Mr. Henderson raised an eyebrow, a flicker of skepticism in his eyes. "Progress? The last complaint was yesterday about a tourist almost dropping their phone. He still gives quite the fright, Riley." "I know, sir," Riley said, nodding. "But I've learned about his history stroking his Jew. Kelver Beaumont, Elvis and Arthur used to spend hours in the music room, and Elvis would laugh a lot. Presley learned it then. He's not being mischievous. He's trying to remember alive. To keep his memory alive." A fascinating theory, Riley, but how does that help our guests not jump out of their skin? "He's starting to learn other sounds, sir," Riley explained eagerly. "He's made a soft thank you, and even hummed a few notes of a song. He's much calmer when I'm with him. I think if we explain his story to the guests, and if I can guide him, he might react differently." Mr. Henderson considered this, looking at Riley with a new thoughtfulness. "You're suggesting we incorporate this into the tour? A parrot story time?" "Something like that, sir," Riley nodded. "Instead of just letting him surprise people, we can introduce him, explain his unique connection, and perhaps I can be present during the tours, specifically in the music room, to help guide the interaction." Mr. Henderson sighed. "It's a risk. If it doesn't work, we're back to square one with even more disgruntled guests." He looked at the complaints pile on his desk. "Tell you what, Riley, I'll give you a chance 1 week. On Friday, I'll personally observe a tour group that you guide through the music room. If you can demonstrate a significant improvement, and if Presley behaves differently than to the tours. If not," he trailed off, but the unspoken threat of rehoming hung in the air. Riley swallowed hard. 1 week, the pressure was immense. She felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear. This was her chance and Presley's. She spent the next few days intensely working with Presley. She'd repeat the "thank you very much" phrase, infusing it with kindness. She'd hum Elvis melodies, encouraging Presley to join in. She'd explain to the parrot, as if it understood every word, the importance of this upcoming performance. "Okay, Presley," she'd say, holding a small treat out to it. "This Friday is a big day. Mr. Henderson is coming. We need to show everyone that you're not just a funny laugh. You're a star. You're a beautiful echo of Elvis, a living memory. Can you do it, boy? Can you show them your other sounds?" Presley would cock its head sometimes, letting out a soft, almost inquiring chirp. Sometimes it would offer the gentle "ah-ha-ha." A few times it even managed a small, warbled sound that was almost, but not quite, "Thank you very much." Riley practiced calming herself, too. She knew that her own anxiety would affect Presley. As Friday approached, Riley felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. This wasn't just about her job. It was about Presley's future. It was about honoring Elvis's legacy in a new heartwarming way. It was time for Presley to sing its new song for everyone to hear. Friday arrived clear and bright. But for Riley, it felt like a day shrouded in a nervous fog. Her stomach churned with a mix of anticipation and dread. This was it. The day of the test. Mr. Henderson would be joining her tour group, observing every detail as they passed through the music room. The pressure was immense. Riley had spent every spare moment with Presley. Gentle, coaxing, soft songs, and endless repetitions of, "Thank you very much." She'd even tried a new trick. Whenever she wanted a gentle response, she'd offer a small, specific hand gesture, a slow, open palm. Before the first tour group arrived, Riley went to the music room, preening its feathers. "Morning, Presley," Riley whispered, approaching its stand. She gently offered a small piece of mango, one of Presley's favorites. "Big day today, buddy. Just remember what we practiced, soft and gentle. You're going to be wonderful." Presley took the mango, nibbling it delicately. It gave a soft, almost purring sound, like a contented cat. Riley took a deep breath. "He trusts me," she thought. The tour group that morning was a lively one. A family with 2 young children, a pair of older women with bright, curious eyes, and a couple of college students sketching in notebooks. Mr. Henderson joined them unobtrusively at the back, his expression unreadable. As they approached the music room, Riley felt her heart hammer. This was the moment. She started her usual spiel, describing the history of the room, Elvis's love for music, his piano, the unique decor. She spoke clearly, keeping her voice calm and steady. Then she transitioned, her voice dropping slightly to introduce Presley. "And in this room, we have a very special resident. This is Presley, our African gray parrot. He wasn't Elvis's personal pet, but he belonged to a very dear friend of Elvis, Arthur Beaumont. Elvis and Arthur spent many hours right here, in this room, talking and laughing." She paused, looking at Presley, who was watching her intently. Presley learned Elvis's laugh, a perfect mimicry. Back when Elvis was alive, he came to Graceland after Arthur passed as a living memory of their friendship, and the joy they shared in this very room. The guests were captivated. Their attention had shifted from potential fear to genuine interest. The children were wide-eyed. Riley took another deep breath. Sometimes, Presley still likes to make a sound like Elvis to remember those good times, but he also has a very gentle side, and he's learned some new ways to show his connection to the king. She extended her hand slowly, offering her open palm, the gesture they had practiced. Just then, one of the young children, caught up in the excitement, let out a loud, sudden giggle. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. Everyone, including Riley, tensed. This was the moment of truth. Would Presley revert to the booming laugh? Presley swiveled its head towards the giggling child. Its feathers bristled slightly. Riley held her breath, her hand still extended, her eyes fixed on the parrot, silently willing it to remember their practice. Then Presley opened its beak. A sound emerged. It wasn't the booming, startling laugh that everyone expected. It was a soft, melodious, almost whispered, "Thank you very much." The words were slow, clear, and perfectly articulated with that familiar Elvis cadence, but without the startling volume. A collective gasp went through the group, not of fear, but of absolute delight. A few people chuckled softly, their faces breaking into smiles. The older women teared up. The college students lowered their sketchbooks, amazed. "Oh my goodness," exclaimed one of the older women, putting a hand to her mouth. "He really said it, just like Elvis." Riley felt a wave of profound relief wash over her. It had worked. Presley had done it. She smiled, her eyes shining. "Presley likes to say, 'Thank you very much,' when he feels happy, just like Elvis used to after a wonderful performance." She gently rubbed a finger across Presley's head, and the parrot leaned into her touch, letting out a soft, contented coo. Mr. Henderson at the back of the group, slowly, almost imperceptibly, let out a soft sigh of relief. A small smile, the first Riley had seen from him in days, touched his lips. The rest of the tour through the music room was a breeze. Guests approached Presley's stand with curiosity and warmth, not fear. Riley knew in that moment that Presley was safe, and that she had found her true calling at Graceland. The grand performance had been a resounding success. The success of Riley's grand performance reverberated through Graceland. Mr. Henderson, true to his word, called a staff meeting the very next day. This time the mood was different. Instead of worried faces and complaints, there was a palpable sense of excitement. "Riley," Mr. Henderson began, looking at her with genuine respect, "your innovative approach with Presley has yielded. Remarkably true. Riley has discovered that Presley's loud laugh isn't malicious." Mr. Henderson continued, explaining the parrot's history with Arthur Beaumont and Elvis. "It's a deeply ingrained memory, a way for Presley to connect with a beloved past." He then outlined a new plan. Riley's role would be formalized. She would become the animal liaison, specifically in charge of Presley's well-being and integration into the tour experience. Her insights into Presley's behavior and history would be incorporated into the tour guide scripts. From now on, Mr. Henderson announced, when guests enter the music room, they will be given a brief, heartwarming introduction to Presley's story. They will understand that his occasional vocalizations are not meant to startle, but are echoes of Elvis's joy and the deep friendship he shared with Arthur Beaumont. It remained elegant, but a small, tasteful plaque was added, explaining Presley's origins and its unique connection to Elvis. It wasn't just a parrot anymore. It was a living piece of Graceland's heart, a testament to friendship and enduring memory. Riley's days now involved a delicate balance of guiding tours and spending dedicated time with Presley. She'd speak to tour groups with passion and sincerity about Presley's history, watching as guests' expressions transformed from wary curiosity to gentle appreciation. When groups entered the music room, Riley would be there, greeting. Presley softly offering a familiar gesture, and Presley, for its part, became an even more beloved attraction. The booming, startling laugh was now incredibly rare, a distant memory. Instead, guests were often treated to Presley's soft, knowing, "Ah-ha-han" chuckle, with a gentle, melodic, thank you very much." Sometimes, when the mood was right, it would even hum a few notes of an Elvis song, eliciting gasps of delight and soft applause. The parrot was no longer a menace that spooked guests. It was a living, feathered bridge to Elvis's warmth and personality. Guests found it charming, a unique and heartwarming aspect of their Graceland experience. Children, instead of crying, would giggle with delight when Presley offered a soft coo or a quiet, sweet melody. Riley saw the transformation not just in the guests, but in Presley itself. The parrot seemed calmer, more content. Its eyes, always intelligent, now seemed to hold a deeper sense of peace. It was no longer agitated, no longer felt the need to cling to the one loud memory it had. It had found a new way to express itself, thanks to Riley's patience and understanding. One afternoon, a little girl on a tour, no older than 7, bravely approached Presley's stand. She looked up at Riley, her eyes shining. "He's not scary at all," she whispered. "He's like a part of Elvis." Riley smiled, her heart swelling. Instead, the Graceland visitor feedback forms began to feature enthusiastic comments about the charming parrot, the unique living echo of Elvis, and Riley, the amazing parrot whisperer. Mr. Henderson, always professional, would occasionally stop by the music room during a tour. He'd observe Riley, confident and graceful, guiding the interaction, and he'd watch Presley, calm and engaged, offering its gentle sounds. A proud, almost fatherly smile would cross his face. She wasn't just working at Graceland. She was helping to preserve a unique piece of its living history. She had helped a lonely parrot find its voice, and in doing so had deepened the magic of Graceland for countless visitors. The mansion, once filled with a startling laugh, now resonated with a softer, more genuine echo of the king's beloved spirit. Presley was no longer a crocky problem. It was truly the heart of Graceland. Months turned into a year. Riley, now a seasoned Graceland staff member and widely known as the Presley Whisperer, had fully settled into her role. The music room, once a source of dread, was now a highlight of the Graceland tour. Thanks to Presley's gentle presence, Presley, for its part, thrived under Riley's care. The parrot remained a brilliant mimic, but its sounds were now largely charming and heartwarming. The booming Elvis laugh was a rare occurrence, usually only if a truly sudden jarring noise happened, and even then, it was often followed by a soft, almost apologetic chuckle. More often, visitors were delighted by Presley's gentle "thank you very much," or a few notes of an Elvis melody, or even a soft rumbling coo unique to its bond with Riley. Riley had learned to read Presley's moods, its subtle shifts and feathers her gaze. She knew when it was feeling playful, when it preferred quiet, and when it was ready to offer a special sound. Their bond was deep and unspoken, but true friendship between human and animal. Graceland itself felt more vibrant, more alive. The story of Presley and Arthur Beaumont was a permanent fixture in the tour, adding another layer of depth and emotion to the king's home. Visitors loved hearing about the loyalty and the living memory that Presley embodied. It wasn't just a museum, it was a home full of stories, some of them still being told by a very special parrot. On a quiet evening, after the last tour group had left and the mansion was settling down for the night, Riley often found herself lingering in the music room. The evening light filtered through the windows, painting the room in soft hues. Presley would be perched, sometimes dozing, sometimes just quietly observing. Tonight Riley sat on the floor softly humming "Can't Help Falling in Love." The gentle melody filled the stillness of the room. Presley stirred, its head tilting. Riley continued to hum, her gaze fixed on the parrot. She reached out a hand and Presley, without hesitation, hopped onto her finger. It ruffled its feathers, then settled its delicate weight. A comforting presence, Riley gently brought Presley closer. "Good night, Presley," she whispered. "You're such a good boy, such a special friend." Presley blinked slowly, its dark eyes deep and knowing. Then it made a sound. It wasn't a laugh or a song, or even a thank you. It was a soft, melodious whistle, a tune Riley had never quite heard before. It was a sweet, almost lullaby-like sound, mixed with a gentle, almost silent, "ah-ha-ha" chuckle. So faint it was, barely there, it was a sound that seemed to combine Presley's own spirit with the tender echo of the king's quiet joy. It was a song just for her. Riley felt a tear trickle down her cheek, but it was a tear of pure happiness. This was more than a job. This was a purpose. She was part of something bigger, something beautiful. Graceland wasn't just a monument to Elvis Presley. It was a living testament to his spirit, his kindness, his enduring love, and the loyalty inspired in those around him. Even a small gray parrot, Presley, the living echo of the king, now brought smiles and warmth, a true embodiment of the joy Elvis brought to the world. And Riley, the young woman who dared to listen to a bird's heart, knew that the king's legacy in all its unexpected forms would live on forever and always in the very heart of Graceland.